Welcome to Palm Springs, California. I'm Jeffery Jaxen, and I'm here at the Freedom Fest, one of the largest libertarian conventions in the world. I'm coming to you live from the showroom floor, bringing you interviews with brilliant luminaries of personal liberty and freedom. Let's do this. And we're live. We're at the Freedom Fest here in Palm Springs, California. I'm Jeffery Jaxen reporting for the HighWire, and I'm sitting here with Efrat Benningsen. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you.
Independent journalist, podcaster, and really a proponent and enthusiast for Bitcoin.
That's
right.
So
I'm sitting down with you right now because right here in the United States, we have a little bit of shifting monetary policy, and it's not in the good direction, from my understanding. So when we talk about Bitcoin, let's just back up for a second. Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, central bank digital currency. What's the difference?
Right. So everyone thinks that crypto and Bitcoin are the same thing. Let's start with that. Bitcoin is very different from any other cryptocurrency in the fact that there are only 21 million Bitcoins ever to be mined. And the cap that we put on the supply of Bitcoin differentiates it from any other cryptocurrency that has a CEO or a company that have started it. They can just print how many coins that they want, and by that inflating the supply and reducing the value of the actual coin. With Bitcoin, you can't do that. Since you have a limited supply, the Bitcoin is so scarce and so rare, and so the only thing that can happen when you have a limited supply is that the price has to go up. So if we're looking at Bitcoin in dollar terms, it's the only scarce asset that can really hedge your hard-earned money and savings and energy, really, and time from inflation, from the theft of the state, etc. And so Bitcoin is very different from crypto. And when you put in CBDC into the equation, then CBDC is a central bank digital currency that has the control of the state, that has features. It's a technological coin as well, and so it can be controlled by the state to a very granular level. Geofencing, things like expiry date on your coins, programming what you can do or what you can't do with it. And so it's also a type of cryptocurrency, but you could say it's the worst there is because it's controlled by the state. And that's when we talk about retail CBDCs. But CBDCs are really a mechanism to have greater control and greater enforcement of what you do or you don't do with your money. So that's control through finance, essentially.
So the CBDCs are essentially the antithesis of everything Bitcoin, the spirit of what Bitcoin was created in, with Satoshi and the papers at the beginning. It was literally against the bankers.
That's right.
Because of that financial crash. So the central bank digital currencies are the government kind of colluding with the World Bank and governments to say, hey, this is a great idea, it's digital, and we can use it to further our governance of you.
That's right. So Bitcoin and CBDCs are 180 degrees different from each other, and they're both digital, and that's why people conflate. And I think a lot of people from the freedom movement are also a little bit worried because they say, I hear sometimes Bitcoin is like is the reason to bring us into a CBDC era. And I've been researching both CBDCs and Bitcoin for a long, long time. And from my research, I can tell you that if the governments and the state and all the different actors, corporations, etc., are coming into Bitcoin now, it's because it's inevitable and they have to. It's because Bitcoin is slowly going to be, in my opinion and many other people's opinion, the world's reserve asset. And as such, because it is scarce money, hard money, it is the digital gold of the 21st century. And so they have to go into Bitcoin. Bitcoin will never stop. It's got this time clock that's going, what people call the blockchain. Every 10 minutes, another coin is being mined. And so there's no other way but for all participants in the economy of the world, and especially the United States, to go into that game. And with CBDCs, they know that they will lag behind. So they have to, I think the U.S. is doing something very smart right now when it's trying to gain more Bitcoin, and it's not more control over Bitcoin because they cannot control it, but they can come and be a significant player in the game.
Exposure, yeah, they just need exposure. So, Bitcoin, when it started, as you know, it was kind of this cyberpunk community. It was kind of these rogue financial people that are going into it saying this is going to be the future, but it was kind of this fringe idea. But now it's not anymore because we have literally U.S. government, Trump on the campaign trail talking about how Bitcoin is going to revolutionize the world. Even Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You've been around the world. You've looked at other countries' test case scenarios. Yeah. What are you seeing around the world outside the United States when it comes to Bitcoin? Because now it's coming out of the idea phase into literal monetary policy of other countries.
That's right. So I think one of the best examples to talk about when we look at other nation states, maybe even doing it before the U.S. has started to do it, is El Salvador. That's probably the best example. In 2021, they've defined Bitcoin as a legal tender. Now they had to actually roll it back, that specific definition, because of the IMF intervening, and they want to take a loan from the IMF. So that was one of the conditions, because the IMF do not like Bitcoin in states' reserves. So El Salvador is one. Another country that is very interesting to follow is a tiny, small country in Asia called Bhutan, which has been mining Bitcoin for a long time, for many years, and they're probably one of the first ones to adopt it. There are many other pockets around the world that may not be nation states accepting it as a legal tender, like El Salvador did at the time, but they are friendly towards Bitcoin. They may have executive orders in place or just educate the merchants and the population around to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, or to educate the population to embrace it as a store of value. And so you get places like Madeira in Portugal, which has a really developed Bitcoin community. You get places like the county of Lugano in Switzerland. Czech Republic, Prague is known to be very pro-Bitcoin. In fact, the Central Bank of Czech Republic said recently that they're going to add Bitcoin to the reserve of the country, or at least put an act together in order to try and do that. But also, after 3 years of holding Bitcoin as an individual, you will be exempt from taxes, from capital gains tax. And that is another trend that is starting to happen in many places around the world. And I think that's what people who are pro-freedom, pro-sovereignty have to really try and push and get the states to embrace, because the moment states are looking at Bitcoin as something that has to be taxed, like an asset or a commodity, then it's not really money yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so the moment they start saying, okay, we'll drop capital gains tax, or maybe after a few years of holding it, you don't have to pay tax anymore, then it's another push for a global adoption of Bitcoin. And I think the last thing I would say is the most interesting adoption you could find is in developing countries and the global south, where you have places that suffer from hyperinflation, and the economy is really sucks, and they wake up in the morning and their local currency is worth a lot less than what it used to be the day before, and they really do need to hedge their savings somewhere. And so they either go to the US dollar, like in Argentina, for example. The peso is so bad, they go to the US dollar. So now with the Stable Coins Act and everything that's coming together in the US to kind of normalize stable coins are becoming that bridge to allow people to transfer their local currency into the US dollar in a digital form, what's called USDT. This is a Tether product. You have many other stable coins as well. And then from there to hedge their savings into Bitcoin, because the path from stable coins to Bitcoin is very short, where the path from fiat to Bitcoin is a little bit longer.
And that's an advantage of the global south, is a lot of people, I would imagine, they didn't have that part where everyone has a bank account. So they're coming from a space where they have this money, they literally need it for survival, and they miss the development of the bank account and the central banking and the Chase and JP Morgan chases. Or they've been debanked.
Right.
So they switch right to this protocol. Really on their phone, they become their own bankers. So Bitcoin...
Doesn't it remind you a bit of Africa, with skipping the landlines and going straight to mobiles?
Yes.
Right? Everyone in Africa holds a mobile phone. It's a little bit like that.
Yeah. So when it comes to cultural adoption of Bitcoin, so we obviously have the states and the governments doing this, like President Bukele in El Salvador, what is the trickle-down effect to the population? What does it do to the culture, the minds of the people? I know in El Salvador, I understand that they actually have a stake in the Bitcoin the government purchases.
Yeah.
So they're part of this journey.
Right. So they do have a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and they keep buying, even though the IMF tells them not to. Mm-hmm. So there's something funny going on there. But that's on the state level. And I really think that it's important to have a top-down approach as well as a bottom-up approach. So on the top-down, there are good people who are advocating to politicians and decision makers in order to make them more educated about it and try to bring it through strategic Bitcoin reserves or the taxing that we talked about, etc. But the bottom-up is the most interesting adoption, I think, because then you get what's called a circular economy. Yes. So you have pockets around the world where people, just Bitcoiners like me and others, really want to make sure that they live on a Bitcoin standard, or at least start their journey towards living on a Bitcoin standard. And for that, they need merchants around them to accept it. They need to trade with other people. They need that peer-to-peer that Bitcoin enables you to do, to be in their day-to-day life, to be present there. And so what they do is what we call in the Bitcoin community orange pilling. They basically go around, whether it's a village or a town. For example, in El Salvador, I visited a small town called Berlin. It's not Germany, Berlin. It's El Salvador, Berlin. And it's a really small, tiny village on a mountain with relatively poor population. And the couple that started the circular economy in Berlin have orange-pilled more than 150 merchants.
Wow.
And most of them are very poor merchants that sell something in the market. You know, they sell memorabilia, souvenirs, food, whatever. And I went there with my phone, and interviewed them and asked them in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. I had a translator. Why do you accept Bitcoin? That was my only question. And they told me, we first accepted Bitcoin because we wanted to participate in the economy. This is the local economy that's happening here.
Economy
the circular economy. Yeah. Tourists come, Bitcoiners. They come from all over the world to see us, and we want to be able to give them what they need. They want to pay with Bitcoin. So we download a wallet, and we start accepting Bitcoin. And lo and behold, before we knew it, we started saving. And we're talking about people that literally have no money. So I asked them, so what do you mean saving? But do you have enough money to save? Like, pardon my question. And they say, we just put a tiny bit every week. And what Bitcoin does is it develops this mindset of savings. It allows people to see further into the future, what they cannot do when they just have to be on that rat race all the time and just earn more fiat, so they can make the day. But in those circular economies, something really beautiful is happening. So instead of, when you call it circular, it's a bit funny because you think it goes in a circle, but it's really the peer-to-peer that happens between all the different people in society. And not only that they start to accept Bitcoin and transact with each other without intervention of the state or banking or anyone else, but also they then understand that if they compare it to their local currency, it keeps appreciating over time, and they can start saving. And that really helps bring people out of poverty. It starts with a mindset shift, and then you actually see it in your wallet. So it's really cool.
And you have people developing a community. So everyone just de facto translates in this, the dollar standard here in the U.S., and there's no community around the dollar. It's just, this is what I have, and give me a good. But with Bitcoin, there's still this proactive, we need to build a community. So that piece right there is essentially very important.
But can I add one more thing? Because I think this is a key, what you said about the dollar. Most people in the freedom community, they advocate for cash, and because they want freedom and they want sovereignty and they want privacy, and I understand that. The thing about cash and fiat is that it's being debased in your hand. It's like a melting ice cube.
Mathematically debased.
Right. Yeah. And people don't understand the whole thing about inflation. So I really encourage my audience on my podcast and people all around the world that are watching to really do their research about fiat. And once you understand what inflation is actually doing, that it's a theft of your money and it shouldn't exist at all, you start looking for other solutions. You bound to step into gold and then Bitcoin, because they are disinflationary assets. I mean, gold is still inflationary, but Bitcoin is disinflationary, and it's really wonderful.
I could talk to you for a lot more questions. The last question I want to ask right now is, there's a lot of people that say Bitcoin, like you mentioned, is a way to usher people into a digital control grid.
Right.
Do you see any negatives to the build out of Bitcoin as it stands right now?
Yeah, sure. There are shortcomings to Bitcoin. Like nothing is perfect. It's a tool in the end of the day, and you have to be aware of the shortcomings. And I think one of them, well, Bitcoin stands for decentralized ledger, right? That all the participants in the Bitcoin space should hold their Bitcoin in self-custody, preferably, or in multi-sig, doesn't matter. But you also have nodes on the network, and nodes are people that are running a copy of the ledger on their own hardware device. Like I have a node, and I run the Bitcoin program on my node, and that allows me and hundreds of thousands of other node runners to be the network. We are the network.
The people are the network, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So we are running the network, and by that we're keeping it secure and decentralized. So even if it goes down in some places, it can always be, it can always come up again. Remind me the question. I blanked
Can
there
it be
for
a negative? Is there a negative aspect to this build-out? Is it a control piece?
Yeah, as we try to be more and more decentralized, the shortcomings are around centralization, trying to centralize some pieces of the protocol of Bitcoin. So one area where we see some centralization is mining. And so the miners of Bitcoin, which are normally big companies with a lot of operational... they use a lot of energy, and they basically need a really heavy pockets in order to fund their operations, because it is a heavy operation. So it just makes sense that economically they will be centralized in order to try and make money and survive in that space. Right. And so the centralization of miners is one shortcoming, and that's something that the Bitcoin community is actually looking at all the time, trying to put checks and balances in place. There are constantly debates and the like different types of problems that are surfing up between the Bitcoiners in the community, which is really beautiful to see, because that is, for me, like a manifestation of a system that is healthy with checks and balances, and with being aware of the risks and the problems that this system may have, and try to work on it and solve it with time.
Yeah, so
that's just one example for a
It's a
short
continual
time.
architecture that needs human attention and a community around it to protect it.
Yep.
Where can people find your work? 'Cause I know people should really be out front on this and listening to people like you and you know, the Orange Pill King and Queen, Max and Stacy. Where can people find your work?
Right. So I'm decentralized as well. So I'm in many places, but X is probably my biggest account. And then you have me on Substack and on Nostr. If you don't know Nostr, it's a decentralized social media platform. And in any other social media channels. So please,
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thanks for inviting me.
Looking forward to the future of Bitcoin in the United States.
Yes,
so
me
thank you
too.
so much.
It will be amazing to see what unravels.
All right.